Your parents landed here with $340 and two suitcases. Not $340 in a bank account, $340 in cash, stuffed in an envelope, hidden inside the lining of an old suitcase. That money had to last 3 weeks. Rent, food, bus fare to a job they didn't even have yet. You weren't born into poverty the way movies show it. No hunger scenes, no homelessness. You had a winter jacket, you had dinner every night. But you learned scarcity in a different language. It sounded like your mom pausing in the grocery aisle, checking the price, doing the math in her head, then quietly putting it back. No explanation. It looked like your dad never ordering a second dish at a restaurant, even when he was still hungry. It was the rule in your house: fix it before you replace it, use it until it's completely done. Scarcity wasn't loud, it soaked in. And what soaked in even deeper was the way money was talked about. Money was a threat, hard to earn, easy to lose. Don't think too big. Ambition didn't have a good name. It was called unrealistic. It was called not knowing your place. You grew up in a house where the question wasn't what could I become? It was what's stable enough to survive. And you understood why. Your parents bet everything on that move, and they survived. Their caution wasn't weakness. It was wisdom from people who had already lost once. You never blamed them. Not once. But that mindset got passed down to you, like a gene. It shows up as a quiet voice every time you try something new. Don't. Be careful. You don't know what could go wrong. You learned shame early. Not shame about your parents. Shame about the gap. The gap between what you wore and what your friends wore. The gap between your homemade lunch and cafeteria food. You learned to shrink yourself. To laugh at the right moments so no one looked too closely. But there was one thing you couldn't shrink. Your awareness. You watched everything. Why do they have that? And we don't. Where does money actually come from? Who makes it? No one told you to pay attention. You just started. And never stopped. There was one night. You were about 14, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework. Your parents were nearby, speaking quietly at me, not arguing, just calculating. How short they were this month. What could be cut? What couldn't? You didn't look up. You kept doing your work. But you heard everything. And something formed in your mind. Not a clear decision. Just a feeling. I don't want conversations like this to exist forever. That feeling stayed. Your family didn't fear being poor. They had already survived that. What they really feared was hope. Because hoping and failing hurts more than never hoping at all. They loved you enough to try to protect you from that lesson. And you understood that. You really did. But you can't build your life on someone else's fear. Even if it comes from love. You're 19. Your shift starts at 5 p.m., ends at 11. $11 an hour, 6 hours. After taxes, it's barely enough to think about next week, not the future. You're a dishwasher, not the kind at home. This is industrial. A machine the size of half a room. Rubber gloves up to your elbows, high-pressure spray, endless stacks of plates, heat from the machine, heat from the kitchen. The air feels thick. Grease, soap, leftover food. A smell you'll never forget. At the end of every shift, your back aches in a way no painkiller fully fixes. But your mind never stops. While your hands run on autopilot, your brain is doing something else. How many tables does this place have? How many customers tonight? What's the average ticket per person? Labor costs, food costs, rent. What's left? You're guessing. But week after week, your guesses get closer to reality. You carry a small notebook. Black cover, fits in your palm. You don't journal, you log observations. Friday night. Full house from 7 to 9:30, 140 customers. Faster table turnover than Wednesday. Why? My manager comps an $8 dessert for a complaint. Table bill was $180. Customer leaves happy. That's a calculation. Why do they buy lobster on Monday, but don't sell it until the weekend? Same freshness, different margins. You don't know exactly what you're learning. You just know you need to write it down. Then one night, third month in, around 10:30 p.m., a thought hits you out of nowhere. The most exhausted person in this kitchen is not the highest paid. No anger, just clarity. You stand there and see it for the first time. You're here. The money is somewhere else. There's a version of you that stays, not because you're lazy, Not because you don't see it, but because seeing it and doing nothing feels safer. No risk, no disappointment. That version still gets love from your family. No one worries. But that's not you. You're not the smartest person in that kitchen. You're just the only one who doesn't believe this is the final destination. You quit on a Monday morning. No drama. You hand in your notice, shake your manager's hand, grab your jacket from the hook in the back, and walk out. On the bus ride home, there's a cold feeling in your chest. Not panic. The kind of cold that comes from stepping out of something familiar into something undefined. You have 3 months of savings. Enough for rent, food. Not enough for mistakes. On Wednesday afternoon, your $180 mattress arrives. You lay it on the basement floor. No windows, fluorescent light, slight humidity. You sit down, open your laptop, and start working. Small projects, freelance writing, social media management, basic websites. Nothing impressive. You're just learning how to sell something that isn't your time. Some weeks, you refresh your email all day. Nothing. By the end of the month, you start calculating how long you can last. No one in that basement knows what you're doing, including your family. Not because you're ashamed, because you have nothing to defend your decision yet. No revenue, no proof. And when there's no proof, people default to fear. Voices from your extended family come through your mom. He quit his job, trying to start something. Kids these days think too big. Those voices sit in your head. You just learn not to let them decide for you. No one tells you this. The biggest cost of building something isn't money. Your cousin Daniel calls in month 3. He's excited. Has a business idea. You listen and quickly realize it has fundamental gaps. Not because he's dumb, because he hasn't asked the hard questions yet. You know the real conversation is coming, and it won't be comfortable. You're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of succeeding and having to explain it to the people you love. Your company doesn't grow in a straight line. No big breakout moment, just slightly better each month, then slightly better again. Enough to keep going, not enough to feel certain. Your first hire was wrong. 3 months later, they disappear, along with a major client. You burn through most of your remaining savings just to stay alive. You don't tell your family. Then one Wednesday morning, a client calls at 9 a.m. They offer $40,000 up front. More than you've ever seen in a single deal. You listen, ask questions, understand the scope, and when the call ends, you already know your answer. Technically, nothing is wrong with the project. But to execute it, you'd have to push your best employee into doing something she clearly said she doesn't believe in. Not because it's hard, because it's misaligned. You call the client back that afternoon. We're not the right fit for this project. After the call, you open your bank account, look at the balance, then close it. Because if you stare long enough, you might call them back. You don't. That employee never finds out. 10 years later, she's still there. And a big part of why the company's worth what it is comes from what she built. Then comes the VC meeting. Glass office, city view. They offer $4 million for 16%. On paper, it's a good deal. You ask for time. That afternoon, you walk by the river, alone. You think about your parents, their entire lives. Someone else set the terms. Landlords set rent, bosses set wages, systems set limits. They never had what you have right now, the ability to define your own terms. 16% isn't just 16% of a $25 million company. It's 16% of everything this could become. Every future decision, every negotiation, and you don't know enough yet to understand what you're selling. You call them the next morning. Appreciate the offer. We're going to pass. Most people learn how to say yes. You had to learn how to say no and sit with the uncertainty that comes after. Daniel calls again that week. This time, his plan is more complete. You listen all the way through, then you tell the truth. The gaps, the assumptions, the unanswered questions. He goes quiet, says he'll think about it. That's the last real conversation you have for a long time. Success didn't show up like a celebration. It showed up like distance. At first, it was small. You missed a few family dinners. You showed up late to birthdays. You started saying things like, "I've got a deadline," and meaning it. No one said anything directly, but you could feel it. Conversations got shorter. Jokes stopped landing the same way. There was a subtle shift, like you were still in the room, but no longer fully inside it. You told yourself it was temporary, just a phase, just until things stabilized. But things never really stabilize, they just grow. And growth has a cost. You started noticing the gap in a different way. Not just in money, but in how people see the world. You talk about leverage, they talk about job security. You think in terms of long-term equity. They think in terms of next month's bills. Neither side is wrong, but they're not speaking the same language anymore. And language matters. There was a night, a family gathering, someone asked you a simple question. So, what exactly do you do now? You tried to explain. You simplified it. You avoided jargon. Halfway through, you saw it in their eyes. Polite nods, not understanding, just being kind. So you stopped explaining. It's just work, he said, and let the conversation move on. That was the moment you realized something uncomfortable. Growth is lonely. Not because people leave you, but because you outgrow the shared context that once made everything easy. And here's the part no one tells you. You will start editing yourself. You'll downplay wins so you don't make others uncomfortable. You'll avoid talking about money because it changes how people look at you. You'll shrink parts of your life to fit back into spaces that no longer hold you. Not out of insecurity, out of loyalty. But loyalty, if you're not careful, becomes self-sabotage. You begin to carry two identities. One version of you, the one building, deciding, taking risks. The other, the one who sits at the dinner table, careful not to sound too different. And switching between those two versions gets exhausting. There's a quiet grief in that, not dramatic, not something you talk about. Just the slow realization that the life you're building and the life you came from are moving in different directions. And no matter how much you care, you can't fully stand in both anymore. The hardest part isn't the work. It's accepting that growth changes your relationships. Some people will grow with you, most won't. Not because they don't love you, but because they didn't choose the same path. And they shouldn't have to. You start to understand something your parents never said out loud. Stability keeps people together. Change pulls them apart. They chose stability. You chose change. Both choices have a price. And this is yours. There's a moment, it doesn't look like much, where you realize you're no longer chasing survival. Bills are paid, there's money in the account, not rich, but not fragile either. And for the first time, you're not reacting, you're choosing. That shift is quiet, but it changes everything. Because when survival pressure disappears, something else shows up. Clarity. You start seeing which habits were built out of necessity, and which ones you're still carrying out of fear. You still hesitate before spending, even when you can afford it. You still overthink small decisions, because you were trained to. You still feel a weird guilt when money comes in too easily. That's not logic, that's conditioning. It's the voice you grew up with, the one that kept your family safe. But safety and growth don't run on the same rules. You begin to separate the two. Frugality taught you discipline, but taken too far, it becomes limitation. Caution protected you, but taken too far, it becomes paralysis. You don't need to erase where you came from, but you do need to decide what still serves you and what doesn't. There's a difference between being careful and being small. One keeps you alive, the other keeps you stuck. You start upgrading your thinking the same way you upgraded your income. Slowly, intentionally, with resistance at every step. You learn to spend without guilt when it aligns with value. You learn to invest not just money, but time and trust. You learn that not every dollar needs to be protected. Some need to be deployed. That's when you finally understand something most people miss. Wealth isn't just about accumulation. It's about permission. Permission to think bigger, to move differently, to stop asking, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "Does this move me forward?" Your net worth grows. But more importantly, your decision-making expands. You stop optimizing for the cheapest option. You start optimizing for the highest return on time, energy, and attention. And that changes how you live. You buy back your time. You walk away from bad opportunities faster. You stop negotiating with things that don't matter. Not because you became reckless, but because you became precise. There's still a part of you that remembers everything. The envelope with $340, the grocery store hesitation, the quiet conversations about money at the kitchen table. You don't erase that. You carry it, but differently. Not as fear, as reference. It reminds you what matters, but it no longer defines what's possible. And maybe that's the real shift. You stop building a life just to avoid the past and start building one that actually reflects who you are now. Not the version shaped by scarcity, not the version limited by caution, but the version that can choose fully, clearly, and without apology.